Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I'd talk about the issue with the design of the BMW i3 and why it's so polarizing. Um, is it really an ugly design, or is it just people's fear, uncertainty, and doubt with the new design that's really causing a problem? With the exception of the false grille in the front of the car, the rest of the prototype as shown here was pretty progressive in its design language, trying to get a very futuristic look. And the production models were pretty close to the original prototype as shown here, with the exception of the side doors where a low sweeping glass facade was removed, most likely for safety reasons. But the rest of the car was pretty close to the prototype when it hit production. That being said, the first impressions by both the media and by the general public was that it was a pretty ugly looking car. And I'm not sure that's because the design was so forward thinking that uh, people were just not aligned to it, or some other reason. But for the most part, it gave it a really bad eye, with people saying it was very odd looking. I think because the design language was just so different than the existing BMW type of lineup. It wasn't just the i3. You can see the Chevy Bolt, which is kind of a similar futuristic design, had similar problems as well. The departure from the typical ICE type design language is pretty dramatic when you compare it to the Hyundai Ioniq, to the BMW i3, where you can see that the cab forward design and short stance is quite a radical departure. You can also see this from the current BMW iX design, where they've gone back to a typical almost an ICE-like design with a long hood, four doors, more SUV type design, which is more in alignment with the classical ICE car design language. And in the latest i4 design, which is very similar as well. The exception would be the BMW Circular, which is even more radical cab forward design than the existing BMW i3, if it ever reaches a production. So what makes a good EV design? If we look at car design throughout time, in this case we've got a 1940s Ford, you can see that the design of what people think is a really good looking vehicle changes radically over time. Compare that to a K car from the 1980s, which, at least in my opinion, did not age well. And there's also been design cues that have been included over time, such as a glass hatch like the i3 has, was popular even back in the 1970s. You can look at the Mitsubishi MyEV, and it's even more of a radical design than the i3, and was not accepted very well for similar reasons. The Cybertruck, surprisingly, was when it first was revealed, was very poorly received, and you can see the audience was going, "Is this a joke?" Because of people's perception of what a pickup truck should actually look like. I think the same is true with the Model S, where it has very conservative design cues with grills in the front, or pseudo grill in the front, and very typical saloon type design. Even the Ioniq 5 has a pretty classic looking hatchback design. You look at the Mach-E, again, it has the faux grille and really emulating an ICE car design for the most part. And even the Peugeot is, again, pretty much, you can't really tell if it's an ICE car or not. The possible exception is the Model 3, where design cues that ICE cars typically have was somewhat diminished, even though it still has a very similar, not a very radical design from the standpoint of the overall layout of the vehicle. So I thought I'd try to summarize up why EVs seem to be having a problem with acceptance. And I think the reasons boil down to being a futuristic design, where car manufacturers want the cars to look different and unique compared to the standard ICE designs. The second one is the standing out of the designs, where a lot of the early EV customers wanted people to know that they were driving an EV and not a standard ICE car, so the cars needed to look different and stand out. Third was the ICE design constraints are gone, so I mean there's no longer the normal constraints that you have with needing grills or tunnels and whatnot. Battery size and placement, because the batteries can be large and placed mainly in the floor and the trunk, that designs tend to look higher than normal cars. They tend to be efficient, so they need to have cues for aerodynamics that are more critical than other cars. And finally, there's just as subjectiveness based on standard ICE car design acceptance over 50 to 100 years of design cues that have been put in people's mind. So if we take a look at the BMW i3 design, what is it that's so polarizing? And several items come up as being potential reasons for this. One is the two-tone color scheme that can cause some unfinished look with the dark colors. The faux radiator grills that are placed very high has an odd design aesthetic. The back door windows being much larger than the front windows seems to disrupt the continuous flow of the design from front to the back of the car. The front bumper, the way it is designed, tends to have a bulbous look instead of being broken into a more classic design that would be expected from ICE car design. The tires are very tall and skinny for efficiency reasons, and it goes against the typical designs you would see. The overall design is short and tall, mainly because of the battery being underneath, and a more futuristic cab forward design that is something that you wouldn't see otherwise. Finally, the short narrow design based for urban maneuverability is somewhat unique compared to many other vehicles on the road currently. That being said, you can see some of the design cues here where the black hood is replaced by a white hood, and it does seem to look like the flow is better. The cab forward design as shown here is much more unique in modern designs than historical designs, and we'll probably see more of that in the future. The side window jog for the back window was unique at the time, but it's actually been used in many other designs now, like the Honda Odyssey vans. But if you take it out, as shown in this picture for a model, it does seem to improve the overall flow as compared to a classic design. And you can see here where someone had redesigned the front grille that you can make the car look more like a classical vehicle. So now that they've discontinued the i3, there's a small but growing group of people that think that the car was ahead of its time from a design standpoint and actually fills a niche that even the larger modern EVs may be missing to some extent. And we'll see whether it becomes a cult classic like some other vehicles throughout time. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you have been, thanks for watching.